Well, thank you for joining us tonight. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but I do want to share with you something that was placed on my heart just on Monday. Powerful story. Many of you might already know the story, many of you might not, but it is the story of Job. You look at the screen and it looks like it says Job, right? We all have said that once or twice before, but believe it or not, his name is Job. But before I get to the story of Job, I first want to talk about Disney. Are y'all a big fan of Disney princesses? Do you just love Toy Story? You're wearing a Stitch shirt, right on. Don't y'all just love, what's another good Disney movie? Beauty and the Beast, there we go. That's a good one. Star Wars, that's a classic. One of my favorite Disney movies of all time is The Miracle. Have y'all seen the movie Miracle? It's about the United States hockey team defeating Russia, then going on to win a gold medal. Classic movies. I love Disney. They make some of the best movies you'll ever see. But the thing about Disney, you always have a fairy tale ending. You always have an ending that leaves the audience going, right on, it worked out for them. They went through a lot to get there, but it worked out. You know what I mean? They always have that fairy tale ending where the princess marries a prince and they live happily ever after. You know what I mean? Some of you know what I mean? They live happily ever after. And I think for us, that's an ending that we all want for our life, right? We all want that happily ever after moment. We all want that fairy tale ending. We all want that point in our life where things just work out, where things are just good. We all want to retire after winning the Super Bowl, right? We all want to ride off into the sunset like a cowboy after saving the day for that little old podunk town. We all want to be on top and then just say, you know what, I'm done. Let's go work on getting pizza all around the United States. Some of you know that reference. His name is Peyton Manning. Yes, he is. We all want that fairy tale ending. Here's the thing, in turbulent times, we don't always know if that ending is even possible. We start to question, we think to ourselves, this is happening. Should we turn to God or should we turn away from God? What do we do in those moments? Life is hard sometimes. And in the midst of life, we often wonder, are these turbulent times ever going to end? Or are they just going to continue? Will I be able to reach that fairy tale ending? Or do I constantly have to go through all the bad of life? In moments like that, it's difficult to handle. We think to ourselves, I should either turn away from God and run away as far as I can, or I should turn to God in these difficult moments. But I got to do something. Because I want my fairy tale ending. I want that moment where I can walk away on top. I want that moment where things just work out perfectly. In the Bible, there's a man by the name of Job, where things just worked out perfectly, right? So in Job chapter 42, you can go and turn with me right quick. Verse 16 through 17, we read the story of Job's fairy tale ending. Job lived 140 years. After that, living to see 4 generations of his children and grandchildren. Then he died, an old man who had lived a long and full life. We read a story like that and we think to ourselves, Job, you are the luckiest person on the face of the earth. You lived for 140 years with grandchildren down to your 4th generation. You got to see your kids grow up. You lived, you grew old, you had wisdom, you lived a perfect life. Good for you, Job. I'm a bit jealous. Now, if you don't know the full story of Job, you can just read that little excerpt and say, this guy is the luckiest guy on the face of the earth. This guy is better than Steve Jobs. This guy is better than Bill Gates, Donald Trump the president, better than Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, better than the greatest musical person like Bruno Mars you've ever seen. Bruno Mars is one of the best, by the way. I don't listen to his music consistently, but he is this generation's Michael Jackson. I have to admit that. He's that good. But we continue on. We want that moment. We want to be on top. We want that fame. We want the 140 years moment where we can see our children grow up to not only become parents, but become grandparents and great-grandparents as well. We all want that fairy tale ending. We think about Job and we think to ourselves, he is a lucky man. He had everything he could ever want. But if you start looking at his life in detail, you can see that although he had a fairy tale ending, his life wasn't a fairy tale. You can see that although the ending was perfect, his life, the nitty-gritty, the time between here and here, that was full of heartache, full of pain, full of difficulty, full of turbulent times. How did he handle those moments? Now, I know you want to know more. I know you want to understand the context even better. I know you want to see what he went through. Tonight, we have an opportunity to see what Job went through. So at this time, watch this video.
So Job begins with a strange story that takes place up in the heavens, which are described something like a heavenly command center. So God is there with these angelic creatures called the sons of God, and they're all there reporting for duty.
And God points out this guy Job, his servant, showing how righteous and good he is.
And then one of these angelic creatures approaches. He's referred to in Hebrew as the Satan.
The Satan. Who is this?
Well, this word is actually a title, which literally means the one who is opposed. So out of this whole crew, he is the one questioning how God is running the world. And he proposes that Job might not actually love God, that he's only a good person because God rewards him. If God were to take away all of the good things he gave to Job, then we would see his true colors.
So he thinks Job is just working the system?
That's exactly right. Maybe he's obeying just to get what he wants.
So God agrees to this experiment and allows the Satan to inflict suffering on Job.
And Job loses everyone and everything that he cares about. It is devastating. And remember, he deserves none of this. God himself said so.
The remarkable thing is that in the midst of all this suffering, Job still praises God.
At least for chapters 1 and 2. But then in chapter 3, we find out how he's really feeling inside. He unleashes this poem that reveals this devastation. It's a long, elaborate curse on the day that he was born.
After this, some of Job's friends come to visit him to offer their help. And all of them are like, Job, you must have done something horribly wrong to deserve this. After all, we know God is just, and we know the world is ordered by God's justice and fairness, so you must be getting what you deserve.
And for the next 34 chapters, the friends and Job go back and forth in very dense Hebrew poetry. His friends keep speculating about why God might have sent such suffering, and they even start making up lists of hypothetical sins that Job must have committed. But after each accusation, Job defends his innocence.
And Job is innocent.
He is. He's also on an emotional roller coaster. At some moments, he's very confident that God is still wise and just.
Yeah, in other moments, he's doubting God's goodness.
He even comes to accuse God of being reckless, unfair, and corrupt. So by the end of the dialogues, Job demands that God come and explain himself in person, and God does so. He comes in the form of a great storm cloud.
Now, God doesn't give Job a direct answer. He doesn't tell Job about the conversation with the Satan.
Yeah, he does something very different. He takes Job on a virtual tour of the universe. He shows Job how grand the world is, and he asks him if he's even capable of running it or understanding it, just for a day. He shows Job how much detail there is in the world, things that we might see every day, but really don't understand at all. But God does. He knows it all intimately. He pays attention to the beauty and operations of the universe in ways that we haven't even imagined and in places that we will never see.
Then to conclude, God shows Job two wondrous beasts and brags about how great they are.
Yeah, they are dangerous. I mean, they would kill you without even thinking about it. And God says they're not evil. They're actually a part of his good world.
And then that's it. That's God's whole defense. It's kind of weird. I mean, what was this all about?
It seems to be this. From Job's point of view, it looks like God is not just. But God's perspective is infinitely bigger. He's dynamically interacting with a whole universe of complexity when he makes decisions. And this is what God calls his wisdom.
So Job asking God to defend himself is actually kind of absurd.
He couldn't comprehend this kind of complexity even if he wanted to.
So where does this leave us?
Well, it leaves Job in a place of humility. He never learned why he suffered, and yet he's able to live in peace and in the fear of the Lord.
For Job, things happened in his life. He lost his home, his family, his possessions. He had every reason to turn away from God. He had every reason to throw in the towel and say, you know what, I quit, I'm done, I'm going to run to the other side. I'm tired of following God. I don't understand. But Job didn't do that. As the video mentioned, the next 2 chapters, he praised God. He didn't understand why all the bad was happening to him because he was blameless. He was without sin. He chased after God. He let God guide his life, and bad things happened to him. Did God force bad things to happen to him? No. But did he allow bad things to happen to him? He certainly did. Why is this the case? As a person, as a human, I don't always know. I don't always know why we have to go through rough and turbulent times. I just know sometimes that's what life offers. But I also know this, my perspective is limited to what I'm currently going through. My perspective is shaped by the lens that I constantly look through. But if I was to zoom out and see the big picture, to see the God picture, I have to believe I would see a completely different movie taking place right in front of my eyes. See, God, he's infinitely knowledgeable about everything. He has the greatest wisdom you could ever know, but not only that, he sees everything. He knows everything. He can see the full picture instead of the narrow lens that we have. Job could have quit. He could have gave up. He could have said, I want more to life than all this heartache. But he remained committed to God, no matter the cost, no matter what he would go through. And honestly, that ended up working out better for him long term. We don't know why all this happened, because God loved Job. God was proud of Job. God looked at Job with pleasure because he was a man that was following after God. But sometimes bad things just happen. Sometimes your house is destroyed by a fire. Sometimes your wife makes a mistake. Sometimes your child gets on your nerves. For Job, he lost both his wife and his child. Sometimes bad things happen. But that doesn't mean that you have to run away from God. That doesn't mean you have to throw in the towel and say, God, I'm tired of following you. Job didn't do that. But one thing he didn't fully understand is how knowledgeable his God was and how God would see the big picture. So that brings me to my point tonight. God has infinite wisdom, and he understands the big picture. God has infinite wisdom, infinite power, and he understands the full picture. Where we're limited, he sees the whole thing. And so what does that say to us? It means that when you're going through a difficult moment, you can trust God. It means when you're experiencing the worst that life has to offer, there's still hope. It means that although life might be coming against you, guess what? You can still have your fairy tale ending if you don't give up, if you don't lose heart, if you keep your focus on God. I wish that this life didn't offer bad things, but we know that it does. It's the world. It's an imperfect system because people don't always want to do good. Sometimes people want to do evil, and that hurts us, and that upsets us, and that causes our life pain and turmoil and heartache. But you don't have to give up. You don't have to say, God, this is your fault. What you can say is, God, I don't understand. I need your help. What you can say is, God, I might be angry. I might be upset. I might be mad. But I know that I have to come to you because if I don't, there's no way out of this. That's why I respect Job. He was angry, he was upset, he was mad, he didn't understand why, he wanted to give up, but yet he went to God. He had a face-to-face encounter with God. God revealed his entire plan in a way, the way nature works, the way animals work. He even revealed dinosaurs to Job, legit dinosaurs called the behemoth. Where's my wife? She is not here. Darn it. She knows how to pronounce this next one. I'm going to butcher it and call it the Leviathan. There we go. Say that one more time. Leviathan. There we go. Way to go, guys. He mentions these dinosaurs, and it really kind of shapes Job's perspective on the matter. Job finally understands this. Hey, I don't know why I'm going through all this, but God, you created the heavens and the earth with all the complexities that they have. You created the animals, and you feed the animals on a consistent basis. God, you chart the stars. You understand how storms work, natural disasters work. It's all in your hands, so who am I? So that brings me to the point where Job would have that face-to-face encounter and his response after he had that moment. So let's look at Job 42, verses 1 through 6. Then Job replied to the Lord, I know that you can do anything, and no one can stop you. You asked, who is this that questions my wisdom with such ignorance? It is I. And I was talking about things I knew nothing about, things far too wonderful for me. You said, listen, and I will speak. I have some questions for you, and you must answer them. I had only heard about you before, but now I have seen you with my own eyes. I take back everything I said, and I sit in the dust and ashes to show my repentance. So after that moment, after that encounter with God, Job starts to understand something. God is smart, God is powerful, God is in control, God can handle any situations, and although life can throw bad things at you, He's still in control, and He can still give you a fairy tale ending. In that moment, Job realized to himself, hey, I got to be humble. I realize that I'm not in control of this earth because I could not handle it like God can. But I give God respect, I give God glory because He knows everything. I respect Job. He went through the worst, the absolute worst, but yet he still kept his faith in God. He did not give up, even when everyone was asking him to. He kept the faith, he persevered to the end. And guess what? Because of his perseverance, God rewarded him. And next thing you know, he's living an additional 140 years, 4 generations of family members, all of his wealth restored back to him. A fairy tale ending, something we all want, like in the Disney movies. Now, I know you might be sitting in your seat tonight thinking to yourself, Dustin, you just don't understand. I don't have to understand. I look at a story like Job and how he lost everything. I don't have to understand. But I do know this, that my God will meet you right where you are if you give him a chance. You might be facing incredible bullying at school, and you might not think there's any hope after that. But I know that my God is still in control. You might be thinking to yourself, God, I just had a loved one pass away. How can I be happy in a moment like this? I don't always know why things happen, but God will meet you and He will help you. You might be facing the worst of the worst of the worst, and you might be this close to saying, God, I quit. I just quit. But I know this, if you approach God, He will love you and He will help you. You might find yourself like Job, experience excruciating pain, difficult moments, and you need help. You might be angry, you might be upset, you might be sad, you might be depressed. But I know one thing, my God will love you, and He will care for you. And He might not tell you why you're going through such difficult moments, but He will love you through it so that you can have your fairy tale ending. If you don't give up, if you keep your faith on God, if you keep chasing after Him, I can promise you this. You will experience your fairy tale ending, whether it be in this life or the next, because you kept the faith. You believed in Jesus Christ, and He walked you through. Now tonight, before I close, if Jay could come to the stage, I want to leave you with one last scripture. It's found in James. James chapter 1, verse 12. I want to read this to you. The promise of everlasting life. God blesses those who patiently endure testing and temptation. Afterward, they will receive the crown of life that God has promised to those who love him. This is my challenge to you. You might be encountering hard times, but I challenge you to love God. Because if you do, you will experience the reward of everlasting life. And that's the greatest fairy tale ending we could ever know. So will you? Will you love God? Will you trust in him? When life is hard, will you keep your eyes on him and go to him first?